Here are your hosts from Inside the Birds, Adam Caplan and Andrew DiCecco.
I am Adam Caplan. He is Andrew DiCecco from Inside the Birds, and we're at Chicken Pete's on Roosevelt Blvd, Andrew, in the heart of Northeast Philly. I grew up in Cheltenham, about 20-25 minutes from this location of Chicken Pete's. We're glad to be here. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking, Adam. It's great to be with you, and we have a lot to discuss coming off that 31-25 Eagles win.
An odd score, by the way, and I know you were there. We're going to get into that, and it's good to see Pete Shiraki from Chickie and Pete's last week in Malvern, their Malvern location, for an event from 76 Caplan, our friends who have now events at Chickie and Pete's all around the country. But, yeah, so, Andrew, before we get to your experience at Tampa Bay and the game, obviously, which we're going to get deep into, and later in the show we'll preview the game the Eagles have at home against the Broncos this Sunday. Some transactions, this is a weird one. So when a long snapper goes on IR, that means he's probably not going to be coming back for a while.
Yeah, so the Eagles placed long snapper Charlie Hewlett on injured reserve, and they signed Cal Adamanis. I believe I said that correctly.
Adamitis.
He went to Pittsburgh, and he spent his first 3 years with the Bengals. Didn't make the team coming out of camp last summer, and he's with the Eagles right now, 27 years old, and you rarely see a long snapper on the injured reserve, and we don't quite know what the injury is at this time, but we'll have to see because that operation with Jake Elliott, Charlie Hewlett, and Braden Mann was really dialed
phenomenal.
in.
Yeah, it's been phenomenal. Wow. So now they had one other one which we knew about was coming. Obo Okonkwo is done for the season with the triceps. So they're down to, 5 edges? But Here's the question. Will this be the week that Azeez Ojulari plays? I know you talked to Vic Fangio today.
Yeah, well, it has to be. I guess by process of elimination, it has to be Azeez Ojulari. And Vic Fangio mentioned that he's been practicing good. Those were the words that he gave me when I asked him what has he seen from him in practice to date. And the reason why he hasn't been playing, and we know this, we've talked about this, but it's due to special teams. He's played under 100 special team snaps in his career. And if you're going to be the fifth or even sixth edge rusher active on game day, you have to be able to contribute to the third phase, which Patrick Johnson does. But this is his opportunity right now to really state his case, because otherwise the Eagles have 4 weeks until the deadline to potentially have to make some decisions.
So we'll talk more injuries in segment 2. But Andrew, okay, so let's get started. Eagles won at Tampa. First, here's my first question: Did you, in our pregame show with myself and Jeff Mosher and Greg Cosell, I did pick the Eagles to win. Mm-hmm. I thought the Mike Evans factor would be big. It was. Let's talk about your week. So you got to Tampa on Saturday. Take us through. Kind of, you get there. By the way, do you get to games early? Like me?
Oh, yeah. I get there like 3-4 hours early. I like to get situated. Yeah. I don't like having to deal with traffic.
Very much like me, man.
I'm a creature of habit, Adam.
So
I think you know that by me. Know that about me by now. But I like to, one, get your spot, get your computer set up, get everything. I like to really fixate on pregame warm-ups. So I wanted to see what Keely Ringo was doing. I wanted to see what Adoree Jackson, who I talked to him in the locker room on Friday about his status for the game, and he pretty much said that it was going to be probably a day of situation. He was out there jogging.
Did Adoree Jackson work out for the game?
He did.
And was he jogging or running?
He was jogging.
Okay,
right. But that's like things like
that.
He
had a groin injury. That's good.
Things like that are what I'm trying to keep an eye on.
Yeah, it's a good note. So you get there. Here's the first question. So we knew it was going to be the low 90s. You've been to training camps. You know how humidity gets. How was the weather there?
It was soupy. That's the word I like to use. And maybe I'm a little nuts, but I was wearing a blazer for that game, and I can only imagine. I was just going from the parking lot to the press box. I can only imagine what the feeling was like on the field. But you could see the Eagles implementing different tactics, like trying to shield the players from the sun.
Yeah, I saw that.
And I mean, when you look at this and you see there's 5 defensive players who played all 72 defensive snaps. I mean, you have to tip your hat to them because it was extremely humid.
So that game was interesting. So this is a team we know the Eagles have struggled there in recent years in Tampa. But this is a game they also found a way to win. And in fact, I don't know about you in the press boxes. That's where you're watching the game. So I'm watching the game at home. And then they get the block punt. I'm like, wow, this is a momentum booster for me because you're not expecting it. Mm-hmm. Being there, what could you see? Do you watch the sidelines? What are you watching as the game progresses?
Well, I try to watch the substitutions on the sideline, and if a player's coming off going into the medical tent, these are are certain intricacies that you have to be mindful of. But I like the all 22 view that we get from the press box. You're able to get that full scope of what the defense is taking away from the offense and vice versa. But let's talk about that punt block by Cam Latu, who's been a really, really strong addition for the special teams units over the past 3 games. I talked to him after the game, and he credited Michael Clay for drawing it up, and he was extremely physical and shot through and got his hands on there, and then the ball bounced right into the waiting arms of Sidney Brown, who scoots 36 yards for the touchdown.
So you talk about how Michael Clay drew it up. Did he give you an idea of what they were looking for?
So I asked Sidney Brown about that, and he smiled, and he goes, yeah, Michael Clay definitely dialed up a little bit of a blitz there, and the way that it freed up Cam Latu, the way that they had it mapped out, and he was able to come through. Now, I should also mention that Latu seems to have a knack for that, because if you go back to the Chiefs game, there were about 2 instances where he came really close to blocking a punt. So he seems to have a really natural feel. You see the physicality, the hand usage. That's been a really good addition in the absence of Ben Van Sumeren.
So, and you mentioned Van Sumeren. I know you've got to know him, who's a pretty good athlete, but unfortunately he had another bad knee injury. However, Michael Clay's units, if you remember, Andrew, fans wanted Michael Clay fired several times.
I do, yeah.
You know, the punting issue, they brought Brett Kern in, who was kind of finished. They had a punting problem before they got Braden Mann, who's phenomenal. Jake Elliott, was great. Then he wasn't so great. How have the special – we don't talk about them much, but how have they kind of evolved in the recent years, especially this year?
Michael Clay, and I think he's done a really exceptional job. And the reason why I say that, Adam, is every year he has to deal – and every special teams coach does as well. You have to deal with a different group of players. It's unlike offense or defense. But to see the collective buy-in where you see starters playing on special teams. Jordan Davis, even last season, played over 100 snaps on special teams. Jalux Hunt, Cooper DeJean plays on kickoff. You don't often see that. It's not commonplace around the NFL, but he has a really good feel for what teams are looking to do. So on Friday, they'll try to break down tendencies about the other team. They have someone there like Britton Covey who can help someone like Jahan Dotson. Britton Covey will take the gunners aside. This is what they look to do. This is how I want it blocked up. This is how the ball comes off their foot, and this is what I need you guys to do. So the Eagles take it to another level in terms of their preparation and detail with the third phase.
So, Andrew, this game was fascinating. So they go up 7-0. They go up 14-0. Because, again, you get to watch the overview. Did it look like they were dominating? Like, what did it look like to you in that first quarter?
It did. It looked like they had Tampa Bay on the ropes. I was really taken aback by the aggressiveness and the flow of the game with Kevin Patullo. I thought he was pressing all the right buttons, getting creative, and finding ways to exploit what Tampa Bay was doing, their aggressiveness. But then you saw a little bit of a shift. But to answer your question, it did look like pure domination.
I mean, they're up 24-6, and they got the ball first in the second half. I'm thinking, there's no way without Mike Evans they're coming back. And I'm like, when it looked a little hairy when the lead got down to 8, and Tampa had the ball, and they actually tied here with a touchdown and two-point conversion. I'm like, wow, this could be an all-time loss. What were your thoughts as the game progressed in the second half, whether they're going to keep it or not?
Well, really, to rewind it back just before the break, Chase McLaughlin kicking that 65-yarder, it seemed like coming out of the break, that injected a little bit of life into Tampa Bay. They put up 17 points in the second half. And then it was the tale of two halves because they had the Eagles on the ropes. But they got inspired efforts from rookie linebacker Jahad Campbell, forcing 2 turnovers. He had the forced fumble. He teamed with Jalux Hunt. Then he has the interception. And I thought that Zach Baun had a really good game, Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell. It took all 3 phases for the Eagles to be able to pull this out, but I thought that the defense really rose to the occasion in difficult circumstances.
And you mentioned Quinyon Mitchell. Other than some holds, which were obvious, which were not called, Vic Fangio said it was his best game as a professional. Why? How do you see that?
Well, I would say the physicality that he played with. He made a nice open field tackle on Bucky Irving. He didn't shy away
from. That was
from
a great tackle. Yeah, that's right.
He didn't, and that was just one of several that he made in that game. But he's playing more he was always a confident player, but he rises to the occasion. He doesn't back down from anybody.
Yeah.
And whether or not it's a tough play or a positive play, he bounces back. He has that short mindset, which to be a high-level cornerback at the NFL level, you have to have. But you can even look at this a little further. His attitude. He seemed to come into this game really juiced up, and there was a time earlier in the game where Cooper DeJean appeared to have an interception. He returns it, and then Tristan Wirfs is he tackles him a little roughly there, and Quinyon Mitchell took exception to that. So he's sort of growing into more of a young leadership type of role. So I think if you look at everything that he was able to do, it was certainly strides in the right direction.
And the thing is about Mitchell is, they barely played man coverage last season. Bottom 5 in zone coverage. Their man coverage is up. Vic has been more aggressive now. I think, Andrew, part of it is because they just cannot get the passer on their own. He's having to blitz more, which is not what he wants to do, but you got to do what you have to do. Give me some thoughts on the defensive line, because Ojomo's pressure rate is pretty good, and he got his first sack, but the run defense has surprised me. It's kind of fallen off. what are your thoughts on the defensive line so far?
Yeah, and to your point, I believe Vic Fangio had to blitz Tampa Bay about 43% of
Is that the number?
time.
Really?
It was just shy of 50%. And when you're not able to get home traditionally, those are the measures that you have to take. But I think interior pressure is, and I've looked at the defense this year, Adam, and I said that was going to have to be their hallmark. Interior pressure and dynamic second-level play. So Ojomo, you talk about his pressure rate. I thought he was pretty disruptive. Didn't necessarily get home all the time, but collapsed the pocket. Jalen Carter, for most of the game, he was in and out later with the shoulder. I thought he had a nice showing as well. But it's the edge rushers that I think it's fair to have some concern, especially now that we're 4 games in and no one's really surfaced or been able to really cement their status as being that dominant pass rusher off the edge. And that's why you're seeing the accelerated blitzing from Fangio.
There's no question with the run defense. When you look at Carter's shoulder, okay, Ojomo is long, but he's not wide and strong like Milton Williams. You knew there could be some issues, and there are. It's not like they're giving him 200 yards a game, but you saw Bucky Irving. They're getting hit a misdirection a little bit.
Yes.
That's been a little bit surprising. But the thing about Fangio and the staff is, Andrew, typically they see what happens. They're talking, they get to see the Microsoft Surface, and they adjust. And eventually, in game, they seem to get the job done.
Yeah, and I guess I should also say that not having Nolan Smith, you can see the impact there. He is a very impactful run defender, physical at the point of attack, and really will just throw his body around and blow things up off the edge. I think that also contributed to it a little bit, but maybe you chalk it up to maybe the excessive temperatures factoring in, because it did to me, from where I was sitting, look like they were getting a little bit gassed in the third and fourth quarter.
Hey, you know that one guy in the group chat who hit a 5-leg parlay week 1 and he wouldn't shut up about it for the rest of the season? Sounds like Caplan, right? Yeah, it could be him. It could be you, and we would all want to be you. MyBookie makes it stupid easy to get in on the action, whether it's college ball, NFL, super contest, and survivor pools, all the spreads, player props, and in-game lines that you could want all under one roof. What more could you want than that? If you're new to MyBookie, use our code, THEBIRDS, THEBIRDS, the birds. Use the code, and any bet you choose up to $500 is fully covered. Make your play, and if it doesn't hit, you get it right back when you opt in using your bet back bonus token. There is no better time to jump in right now. No better place to play. Football is back. Let's make some money with MyBookie.
Well, Andrew, it's time now for this week's injury review. Lane Johnson, the shoulder stinger. It acted up again, and Fred Johnson, Johnny on the spot, but this is a concern.
Yeah, I mean, Lane's been banged up this season. He's been battling through some things, and you have to wonder, Adam, and I know it would be to the Eagles' detriment, but if maybe sitting someone like a Landon Dickerson or a Lane Johnson for a game or two would serve them well for the foreseeable future, rather than keep plugging them in and they're battling through some things clearly. That will be one thing that I'm keeping an eye on Wednesday when I'm out there on the practice field. What's Lane Johnson's designation? Is he out there? Is he working? And things like that. But it seems like if it's not properly taken care of, it could linger.
Yeah, and you notice if he was sitting on the bench just staring and trying – because when you have a stinger, Andrew, sometimes you lose feeling and you get it massaged out. But, he's an older player. You worry about that. You mentioned Landon Dickerson, who had multiple surgeries before the season, one right after the Super Bowl, and then one the meniscus trim right before the season started. So you worry about that, and this is where not having a guy like Jack Driscoll, who's versatile, could play multiple positions. They missed on Trevor Keegan, who they cut. They don't, Andrew. Who is that guy? Brett Toth?
Brett Toth would be the logical fit at guard in the absence of Landon. He's been around. He's in his 7th season right now. They trust him. Jeff Stoutland's worked with him over the years. You're not going to be able to replicate that production or come close to it, but that would be the option. And then I think you have to look at Matt Pryor, who can play.
Yep.
He can play either guard spot, but he's really a right guard. Can play right tackle. You saw that a couple weeks ago. And Fred Johnson, sort of the jack of all trades, the game day swing tackle, but. That's why they brought him in, because as we're sort of outlining this here, you can see that there's a lack of depth there, or experience depth.
Now, you mentioned Dickerson. He's just got to play better. The hope is at some point he's going to get himself into game shape and he gets back to where he was. And then Tyler Steen gets clipped. His left knee, it looked really bad. I don't know if you can see it from the press box, but thankfully he didn't miss much time. He came back, but wow.
It looked bad. I talked to Tyler after the game very briefly, and he said he hyperextended it, put a brace on, went back in there, and he said whether it was adrenaline or what. He goes, I just, I wanted to be out there, and I said, how do you feel? He goes, I feel good. He said, we got the win.
We'll see on Wednesday if they list him.
Wednesday, he's another name I'll be keeping an eye on.
All right, let's go to defense. Jalen Carter, we talked about this earlier, and we'll give you a little bit more detail. So at Inside the Birds, we put it out there that when they drafted him, the one concern for him from an injury standpoint was he had chronic shoulder issues. Now, I don't know if it's the same shoulder, but Andrew, it's interesting. He started training camp, and the Eagles are one of the few teams that do this, with an injury report. Most teams will not give you one. It's at shoulder. And he's still almost every week on with his shoulder. Are you concerned about this?
With Jalen Carter?
I
think you have to be, because it was a problem, or it flared up enough where it was reported in July, and he's had to deal with that for a number of months now, and then it surfaced again. So he said, I had to go back out there. I wanted to finish the game and be out there with my guys, but you have to look at everything long term, and he's so vital to what the Eagles do defensively, the centerpiece of that defensive line, that we talked about the offensive line and some of those key players. You have to wonder if being a little bit more cautious with someone like a Jalen Carter is going to serve the Eagles well, for crunch time.
And remember, Byron Young, for a fourth tackle, is playing a lot.
He's playing a lot.
Yeah, a little bit more than I expected. So let's also look at Nakobe Dean. Now, this is interesting. We know that Nakobe had said weeks ago he'll be ready to get on the field to practice in Week 5. And what did Vic Fangio say about this?
He said his 21-day practice window, for those who don't know, will be opened either this week or next. If you remember when Nakobe was initially put on PUP, he put out something on social media that said, see you Week 5. Obviously, there's a ramp-up period that's required.
Yes.
You can be in as good a shape as you can be, but there's nothing that replaces being in football shape. But what I will say is he's been around a lot more the past couple of weeks.
Okay.
He was working early before every training camp practice. He really seems to have attacked the rehab process, as he said he would when I spoke to him during cleanout. And he's going to be – now the question becomes, how would he fit into the equation? Because they don't traditionally rotate their linebackers, right? And Zach Bond and Jahad Campbell are playing so well right now that where would he fit?
Off the field, right.
So I think if you look at what Nakobe Dean can bring from a run game perspective, he is very good coming downhill, and he's also effective as a blitzer. So maybe situationally down the line when he's able to go, you could see him carving out a role.
All right, more injuries. Obo Okonkwo was put on IR today with the torn triceps. That'll do it for him for the season. It's a tough injury, man.
That's tough, man. I mean, he played just 4 snaps. I've had some really good conversation with him. He really has embraced the culture and said that he noticed right away that this culture was unlike anything that he'd been around. They win in Philly.
He's not used to it.
Well, he said when you see someone like Jordan Davis smiling ear to ear and he's talking to receivers and things like that, he said the culture here is just different. And he seemed to really appreciate being here. He got his opportunity to be active, and then he played just 4 snaps until he was immediately rolled out with a triceps, and that was obviously never a good sign. So
let's talk before we get to Dory Jackson. What does the depth look like now at edge for the Eagles?
At edge, well, you have Jalix Hunt, Zadarius Smith, Josh Uche, Patrick Johnson, and Azeez Ojulari. Now,
who's yet to play this season? Yes.
Right. So as you always say, Adam, depth is not about the amount of players that you have; it's about the quality of those players. Yeah. So we're going to learn a lot about the depth in the coming weeks. And look, Azeez Ojulari has 22 career sacks, and he has youth, and there was a lot of optimism about what he could potentially bring in a rotational role. We're going to find out. He should be active. He has to be active on Sunday.
Andrew, other than that Jets game where he had a sack, he did not look explosive in training camp.
No.
And I'm not surprised that he has been inactive. But, and Vic's right, yes. When it comes down to bottom of the roster guys, it's special teams comes into play. But until Howie Roseman makes a trade, if he does, for an edge player, he's going to have to play because, I mean, I know that they're using Campbell now a little bit more on the edge.
Bit.
But the fact of the matter is they need edge rushers, man. They're not that's why Vic is doing what he doesn't like to do. That's on that blitz rate, crazy number you gave.
Yeah.
You got to do what you got to do to get to the passer.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the 5 is Patrick Johnson, who is a core special teamer. He played a decent amount of snaps against the Bucs because when you lose Okoronkwo, you only have 4 edge rushers that are going. So they're really light there, and the numbers are dwindling, and they need production from that unit because now we're a quarter of the way through the season and we have yet to see anyone really emerge or make a dent. So Darius Smith had a nice showing against the Chiefs in his first game. I think today Vic Fangio even said that he thought that the game against the Bucs was Darius Smith's best game, even though it didn't produce a sack. We'll have to see. They have questions there, no doubt. And this is something that you and I have talked about throughout training camp, and it's something that has surfaced and is persisting right now.
Andrew, when you look at this defense, okay, to me, they've been most consistent of either side of the football. We're only through 4 games, but how good could this defense be?
I think they're going to continue to get better at him, and the reason why I say that, it's a very young defense. Someone like Jihad Campbell and Drew Makuba, the first and second round picks of this year, they're going to continue to get better. Yeah, they're going to make their mistakes, but they're coachable. They have a very sharp football IQ, and the more reps that they get, you can see them becoming more and more comfortable within the defense. They also have someone like Cooper DeJean, who you can make an argument is one of the best tackling defensive backs in the NFL. Quinyon Mitchell playing with a lot of confidence. The question that I have in that group, I go back to the edge rushers. Unless that area is fortified, there's going to be questions. But I think there's enough talent there to move that forward.
So people have asked us about Ty Robinson. I thought he was a little bit raw in training camp. I'm not surprised that he's really only, if he's active, he's playing on special teams. What are your thoughts on him?
I expected to see more from him in training camp. He never really flashed. You could clearly see that he was going through some growing pains, which is kind of odd because he played 5 years in college. He's 24 years old. But every young player progresses at different rates, and that's what I often tell folks when they're tougher on some younger players. But you have to be able to play with how they want you to play, the hand usage, and be able to with the fundamentals and the assignment sound nature that the Eagles require. And if there's any reluctance there, they're not going to put you out there. But he has to be active because they have 5. He's the 5th defensive tackle, and especially in that kind of weather, you can't just go into it with 4 defensive tackles. But I was under the impression that he wasn't going to factor in much in terms of playing time, and the snap share really reflects that.
Linebacker-wise, I did want to touch on them briefly. So you mentioned Zach Bond earlier, who's been phenomenal. Jihad Campbell, to me, is a little bit ahead of schedule. Campbell's role in the future, we know Dean's on the final year of his deal. He's coming off a major knee injury. Give me Campbell's projection for the next couple of years.
I don't think it's hyperbole to suggest that he could be one of the best players at his position. And I think Zach Bond said it best in the locker room after the game. He doesn't even know what he's doing yet.
Really? Did he really say that?
He said he's still figuring it out. He's still new to the position, and you're seeing the impact that he's having on the field. And I think, I go back to something else Zach Bond said. When Jihad Campbell gave up that 72-yard wheel route off the left sideline where he was matching and carrying Bucky Irving for about 7 seconds because there was no pressure, Zach Bond told him on the sideline, he goes, okay, you got 20 seconds to think about that and be mad at yourself, and then you got to let it go. Because Bond said that if that happened to him in his rookie year, he said that would have ruined me for the rest of the game. But for Jihad Campbell to come back in that game and later make an interception that was key in that win, I think tells you about his mental resolve.
Secondary-wise, Andrew, because we all know about Cooper DeJean, who you mentioned, okay? Joey Jackson did not play well before that. But to me, and people could say whatever they want about Kelee Ringo, we've been very critical of Ringo's play since he was drafted. And we know what happened in training camp. But I give him credit for this. I know Mike Evans was out. But this is a start where they had nobody else. Perry Nicholson wound up playing, but you can't use him as a starter. Ringo's got good size. We know he could run. There are issues with stiffness. We've talked about this now for 3 years. But he held up okay. I know they didn't throw it to him, But you were at the game. What did Ringo look like to you?
Yeah, I think Kelee Ringo deserves some credit here because going into this game, it was widely expected. I think we were all a little surprised that Baker Mayfield didn't challenge him more in coverage, and Kelee Ringo was even surprised that he wasn't throwing at
Did
more.
he say that?
Yeah.
Really? I didn't know that.
But Vic Fangio said he was sticky in coverage, but the tackling has to be better because
that was
there
not good.
there was 2 or 3 times where he failed to wrap up a ball carrier. And you may ask yourself, well, he's so proficient in doing so on special teams, well, there's not always that correlation. And I think the more that he plays, he'll be better at that. He's big. He's about 6'2", 200 pounds. But, look, the teams are eventually going to start to challenge him. And I thought it was very telling that today, when asked about is there a potential that Kelee Ringo could usurp Adoree Jackson as that second corner opposite Quinyon Mitchell, and Vic Fangio said it's possible.
You know what's interesting about that whole thing, Andrew, when you look at Fangio and how he thinks, you can't like if you put together, okay, what do I want a corner to look like? It looks like Ringo. Like if you draw up a corner, 6'1.5", 200 pounds, long, could run, but he's got issues. So there's a reason why he dropped to the 4th.
Right.
But I think you see there's something in him as a 4th corner. There's some upside. And quite frankly, at this point, Denver's coming in. We'll talk about them later in the show. Denver is they're one of the deepest teams at receiver. They've got Cortland Sutton who can play.
Marvin Mims.
Mims who can run.
Yep.
Troy Franklin who played with Bo Nix
Sure.
at Oregon who can run. That matchup would actually worry me more, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and I think, and you and I and Jeff have outlined this for 3 years now, he struggles in transition with the fluidity. Yep. And that's where, if you look at what Adoree Jackson brings that Kelee doesn't, it's simply just the fluidity. He's a fluid mover, and he has good change of direction and short area quickness. But Kelee has the physicality, and I think the more that he plays, he can potentially be serviceable. Yep. But he's going to face a stiff challenge this week against the Broncos for the reason in which you outlined.
All right after this break, we're going to take an inside look at the Eagles' next opponent on Sunday, the Denver Broncos blowing out the Bengals on Monday night.
Sky Motor Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schulter, make sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
And thankfully, it's going to be 1 Eastern game on Sunday. The weather report will be nice, but why that? It's actually going to be nice. I'm Mr. Long Range Forecast, barring a change in it, of course. So that'll be a 1 Eastern game. The Broncos, who just won, they blew out the Bengals at home. They lost 2 in a row. But they are a deep team. What are your thoughts on this matchup initially here?
This was the game when the schedule came out, Adam. I circled Week 5
really
as a game that I believe that was where they're going to find their identity, who the Eagles are, what direction they're headed, because as the calendar turns to October, that's where you get a better sense. And I thought that this matchup presents a unique challenge for the Eagles. You talk about them being deep at wide receiver. Bo Nix hasn't necessarily played particularly well, but Vic Fangio today sort of compared him to Baker Mayfield. He said, I wouldn't be surprised if that's Baker Mayfield's brother. And compared him stylistically. So that's a player that you have to account for, especially his ability to create yards with his legs. And their defense is solid. Look, Pat Surtain, the corner, is among the best in the NFL. And, I mean, for an offense that's struggling, especially in the passing game, that's something I'm certainly going to be keeping an eye on.
From a matchup standpoint, with Denver coming in here, Sean Payton, we know they're kind of a balanced team. They will run the ball. They actually ran the best they have. In 3 years, Payton has been there against Cincinnati, but you know the receiver core there. We know the Eagles have a problem with corner opposite Mitchell. They shockingly, other than the bust, whatever you want to call it, when Ibuka scored that 77-yard touchdown, which is kind of fluky because it wasn't really designed. It was just
scramble drill. Yeah,
play broke down. How do you think they match up against the Broncos receiver group?
Well, I mean, we talked about Kelee Ringo. That's somebody that I'm expecting. Bo Nix and Sean Payton, who, by the way, is a really good offensive mind. They're going to target him, and I don't think you worry so much about Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean, but there's also the youth movement that you have to take into account. Drew Makuba, right. Very high football IQ, but you saw he was partially victimized on that Ibuka play. someone like Sean Payton, who does have that, advanced offensive mind, they're going to target someone like a Makuba or a Keely Ringo or try to maybe isolate Jihad Campbell in space. But big picture, I do like that matchup for Philadelphia.
Let's talk Drew Makuba. Drew Makuba was a guy that was drafted to replace Gardner Johnson, C.J. Gardner Johnson, who was released, by the way, by the Texans last week. It's crazy how things work out. But Drew Makuba, your thoughts on his play so far? What did you see in the offseason program? And overall, what kind of player could this be for the Eagles for the future?
He keeps getting better, Adam. Confident player, one who has accepted coaching. Vic Fangio hasn't minced words, as he never does, but he didn't mince words, even dating back to week 1 about Makuba. He played okay. He said there was a couple busts in coverage. And what did Makuba do the next week against the Chiefs? He has a big interception, and he played a lot better. I mean, coming out of Texas, I had him graded very highly. He was my third-rated safety in the class because of the football intellect, the versatility, the ball skills, and to me, that was the quintessential Vic Fangio safety. If you look back on the history of what he traditionally looks for there. But in training camp, he didn't play a lot. He didn't have a lot of opportunities with the first team because he had the shoulder injury that sidelined him for a while. He had the hamstring. But I think that it really speaks to how confident Vic Fangio was because he deployed him as the week 1 starter and hasn't looked back. And then, coming off the Bucs game, it was all Drew Makuba at safety. There was no longer a rotation. I think Sidney Brown played 1 defensive snap. So that tells you, even if Vic Fangio himself won't tell you.
That's wow. That tells you.
That tells you he's the guy.
Can help him, yeah.
And that they're getting more confidence with what he's been able to do and what he can handle.
All right, so one thing I do want to talk about with this Eagles defense is when you look at this matchup, and we know that Denver, we'll get to defense, we'll switch to the other side of the ball in a minute. When you look at the skill level, you mentioned Jihad Campbell, right? We know about Jalen Carter being a great player. But I look at Denver's skill positions. Okay, we mentioned receivers. Evan Ingram is their pass-catching tight end who's a really good athlete. Pretty good offensive line. This team, and you were talking about this might be a litmus test or see where the Eagles' identities, where they're at. I feel like this is a game, and I know it's home. This is a game where the Eagles' defense might have a little bit of a problem.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be – I look at this as a measuring stick because it's a pretty balanced team. And Josh Grizzard, the offensive coordinator for the Buccaneers, he's young and I guess he's inexperienced. But Sean Payton isn't. And they're going to know how to exploit what the Eagles are looking to do defensively. And he knows Vic Fangio very well, by the way, Sean Payton. So this is a big-time matchup. I have questions about the Eagles' offensive line in this one as well, because they're banged up, especially along the interior. So I'm not quite sure that this is going to be the week where Saquon Barkley is able to get going, which puts the onus on the passing game to get going in a hurry. And they haven't shown through 4 games that they can be consistent from quarter 1 through quarter 4.
Let's switch to the other side of football, Andrew. Let's talk about the Eagles' offense and the Broncos' defense. Nick Bonito, who's their star edge rusher, he just got a big extension, but there's so much going on with that football team. What do you think about Denver's defense matching up against the Eagles' offense?
Yeah, I like Denver's defense. They're tough. They're hard-nosed. They fly to the football. The Eagles' offense, I'm not exactly sure what they're looking to accomplish offensively in terms of their personality, their identity. We've seen signs of life in the Rams game late in that one. In the first half of that Buccaneers game, Kevin Patullo and the Eagles' offense was extremely aggressive. They were creative. They had plays off of the push play that I thought caught an aggressive Bucs defense napping. But this is a game where they can't afford to get conservative, because I do believe that that's where you can fall behind against a team like this who is equipped to score and make plays defensively. So it behooves the Eagles to get off to a fast start. But not only get off to a fast start, but maintain that.
All right, we got to talk about the running game. It's been dreadful. We knew there was no way Barkley would be as good as last year. It's impossible, virtually. But I cannot believe how bad the running game is. Give us your thoughts. Why isn't it better?
Yeah, I mean, Saquon Barkley's averaging 3.1 yards per carry, 59.3 yards per game. I look at it from a number of different perspectives here, because whenever you see some area, whether it's the receiving element or the running game, there's always multiple factors that are contributing to it. The offensive line, the interior, Landon Dickerson, banged up. Cam Jurgens, he had back surgery in the offseason and didn't get a ton of work throughout training camp.
Sure.
Then you look at Tyler Steen. He was banged up in the game playing through something. Lane Johnson has been, dealing with things the past few weeks. I mean, they're banged up there for one. They're not generating the same push that they normally do from the interior. Saquon Barkley, to me, watching the games over the past really 2 or 3 weeks, I think it's fair to wonder whether or not he's pressing at times. And Kevin Patullo kind of alluded to making sure you're not forcing things. And when things aren't there, and remember, there's truck-size holes that he had last season. And he's used to sort of finding the crease and accelerating for big chunks, and they're not there. So I think sometimes maybe you can see a little frustration kick in.
Speaking of that, Andrew, think about this. This is an unbelievable number. So yards before contact, which basically means just like it sounds, his yards before contact was 4 yards, okay? That means he's not getting touched until he hits 4 yards, okay? This year it's about 1.7.
Oh,
That's really bad. Now I'm sorry, I'm not blaming Jeff Stoutland, but that's anemic. Like
and for somebody of that caliber,
yeah,
and
good.
I'm not one who looks at the workload that he got last year as a byproduct of why he's not necessarily being able to find the same success. I think that's not correct. You can look at the offensive line play. I also think schematically there's things that the Eagles can do differently. They run a lot of 12 personnel, but I think maybe going more 11 personnel, getting another passing option on the field, but also spreading the team, spreading the defense out, and giving him more space to work with could serve them well. When the offensive line's not playing particularly well and it's not there, you have to try something different to be able to spring Saquon. I also, and you and I have talked about this, I wonder if the Eagles would consider utilizing Cameron Latu when they do go to 12 personnel, who is very physical at the point of attack, to maybe add another dimension to that run game, because he can drive players off the ball, and maybe that helps with creating some space too.
You mentioned something to me about Cam Lotz. It's probably the first time we talked about it, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks ago. Didn't you say he stoned somebody in training camp?
Jahad Campbell.
How?
He stoned, Jahad Campbell, he was beating tight ends, whether it was Calcaterra, Nick Muse. He got Calcaterra multiple times, but he was just attacking downhill, launching his body in there and really blowing up plays. But they put in Latu, and Latu didn't get a ton of reps in practice. He was the 5th or 6th tight end, to put things into perspective. But they plugged him in. Campbell tried the same thing, and Latu stoned them, and it was at a standstill. So that made my notebook clearly, and then he did it later on in practice with, I think, another linebacker. And I started to go back and go through my notes from the draft that year, and I had physicality as underlined as one of his predominant traits. And you see that he was new to the position because he entered Alabama as an outside linebacker, transitioned to tight end, had some trouble being off sides and things like that, eventually earned the trust of Nick Saban. So he's sort of growing into that role a little bit, and now he's doubling as a fullback as well.
And look, you see him offset, but what they've got to do, Andrew, is get Calcaterra out of playing in line. He can't block anyone in line. He's too small.
He can't do it. And Latu, I should also mention, played more snaps this week than Kylan Granson.
Which is interesting.
Which is for the first time this season. So I think that's something also to keep an eye on.
All right. When we come back, Andrew, it was Coordinator Day at NovaCare. All 3 of them spoke. There's some interesting stuff that you mentioned. Vic Fangio will get into his stuff. And you knew that Kevin Patullo was going to be on the grill. That he was going to get asked about what happened in the second half. And Michael Clay, he's not the scapegoat anymore. It's been a couple of years, man. And what could you say right now?
He's been outstanding.
Yeah, they've got one of the best special teams groups in the National Football League.
Hey, fall is planting season. Did you know that many plants and trees actually do better when planted this time of the year? But you got to know where to start, and that's why I love fastgrowingtrees.com. Doesn't matter if you live in the sunny south or if the air's getting a little chilly where you are, the plant experts can help you find the perfect fit for your space. They've got everything your yard needs: fruit trees, privacy trees, shrubs, flowering trees, so much more. And Fast Growing Trees makes it so easy for you to have your dream yard because you can order online and get your plants delivered directly to your door. If you're like me, you're tired of spending way too much money on landscaping. And if you walk into one of those nurseries and you look at all the stuff they have, you have no idea where to begin. That's why you need fastgrowingtrees.com. Doesn't matter about the size of your yard. They got over 6,000 plants to fit any space and a 14-point quality
checklist ensures you will get the best quality plants possible. This fall, they have the best deals for your yard, up to half off on select plants and other deals. And listeners to our show get 15% off their first purchase when using the code BIRDS at checkout. 15% off at fastgrowingtrees.com using the code BIRDS at checkout. Now's the perfect time to plant. Use BIRDS to save today. The offer is valid for a limited time. Terms and conditions may apply. Check out the link below or in the show notes and support the show. Sports are all about competition. Every snap, every possession, every clutch moment matters. That same energy is what 1v1 Me brings to video games. Every single day, you can watch and stake on matchups in Madden, NBA 2K, FC, and Call of Duty Search and Destroy. All the games are streamed live. Every match has refs, and payouts are instant. And these aren't just random online lobbies. These are the best players in the scene, pros, streamers, and rivals. With season playoffs and the championship game on the line, every game matters. Over $100 million has already been paid out on the app, and the community is growing fast. If you're a sports fan, a gamer, or just someone who loves having a little extra on the line, 1v1 Me is where you need to be. It's not just about winning, it's about the bragging rights too. Every match has a chat going crazy, and you can back your picks in real time. Download today and use code BIRDS. Your first stake on the app is risk-free. That's code BIRDS for a risk-free first stake.
We talked about it's Denver week, an AFC opponent, non-conference game, but still counts as Major League Baseball.
Yep.
It's only one of 17, not one of 162. It was coordinator day. So Eagles, for decades, Andrew, the coordinators speak on Tuesdays. All right, Vic Fangio, he's the best.
I love Vic, man.
He really hides anything. Give us a Cliff Notes version of what he said today.
Well, he was asked about the busted coverage play, the Igbuka 77-yard touchdown, and his answer was bad play. He didn't really elaborate on that, but he did mention that it's possible that those were his words, that Keely Ringo could potentially unseat Adoree Jackson as the second corner opposite Quinyon Mitchell. In terms of Azeez Ojulari, he mentioned that him being inactive for the first 4 games was directly attributed to his inability to play special teams, or I guess the fact that he hasn't played it throughout his career. But he mentioned Quinyon Mitchell as well, that he thought that was the best game that he's played as a pro, and I think we should talk a little bit about Quinyon Mitchell and how he continues to grow within that defense and really is starting to creep up towards the NFL's top players at his position. But when you get that kind of praise from someone like Vic Fangio, I mean, that's certainly not something that should be taken lightly.
Yeah, in fact, I say with Vic Fangio, he throws around compliments like, I don't know, manhole covers. I mean, he's a funny guy. He reminds me of Jim Johnson, a little bit more crusty, the late, great Jim Johnson. But the thing is, he gives out so much good information. You know, it's rare in today's NFL, Andrew. This is my 27th year of covering the NFL. It's very rare now that coaches give you anything, even assistants. Some give you a couple tidbits. This guy's like the best I've seen.
And sometimes, I mean, he doesn't usually give overly expansive answers,
right,
but there's a lot in those answers that are extremely telling. And I guess over the last year and some change, you learn how to speak Vic and see what he's trying to say.
Yeah, I get it.
But other times he's more blunt. And I think that is certainly a useful tool for what we do and much appreciated. But what I've noticed from this defense, to take this even a step further, is the collective development that you see from all 3 levels. They have a really exceptional group of assistant coaches, Bobby King, linebackers coach, Christian Parker, who I believe will be a future defensive coordinator, coaching the defensive backs right now, and the list goes on. But it should be no surprise that when you look at this defense, in which Fangio presides over, that they continue to make strides each week.
All right, let's get to Kevin Patullo. You knew it was coming, and you should ask them. The first question was about what happened in the second half. Kevin, his answer, give us your opinion. I don't think he said much. But
I transcribed it on my X account, and I went back and reread it again, and I couldn't exactly glean much from that. It seemed like he definitely tipped the hat to some of the tough defenses that they played over the first 4 weeks, and said that it's good to experience that early in the season, and mentioned that it's sort of a learning process, but that sometimes they have to look at their approach, whether it's being more creative in the second half or making adjustments on the fly in the first half to counter what the defenses are doing. But he also talked about A.J. Brown and his communication. He said they're in constant communication, and just that they have a good relationship. And that's not really a surprise. A.J. has been very vocal in his support of Petulo since he was appointed as the offensive coordinator. So, yeah, I mean, we talk about the running game. We talked a lot about that, and he mentioned a lot of what he talked about last week about trying to see what they can do as a coaching staff to create more space and have things blocked up a little bit better and try to really expand that. But other than that, not a ton to dissect from what he had to say.
All right, let's get into that before we get to Michael Clay. So their offense has been wildly inconsistent. You see some stuff looks incredible. Like the first week, you were there for the Tampa Bay game.
Oh, and by the way, I should also say that those plays to Goddard had been, something that they've been sitting on for 4 years.
The shovel pass, I think every team has it in their arsenal, in their playbook, but sometimes you have to bring it out. Let's take an overview of Petulo. You've covered him now for a number of years. He's moved up now. He's the coordinator. He's also calling the plays. Some coordinators don't call the plays, but he is. What are your thoughts on this guy?
I like KP. I think he's a sharp offensive mind. Folks have to remember he just called his fourth game ever at the pro level. There's going to be growing pains, despite the star-studded cast that they have offensively. And I think you've seen, whether it's the Cowboys game where they score 3 consecutive drives, whether it's the Chiefs game where there were opportunities for an explosive play, had it been blocked up better on the initial play that had A.J. Brown streaking down the field. That 13-yard touchdown run that Saquon Barkley had it been further back, that's a 50-yard run. They had it really well blocked up, and there's nothing but green grass in front of them. So you see the ability for him to be able to do this and conjure up plays. Now it's just about being more consistent, being more aggressive. But the Eagles' philosophical approach, as you know, Adam, is to protect the football, play things a little close to the vest when necessary. And, I think that you learn a little bit about yourself the first 4 weeks of the season and knowing that you can't afford to take your foot off the gas. Kevin's learning, just as everyone else on that unit's learning. And whether or not you want to acknowledge it or not, September is an extension of the preseason. I do believe that they're going to find their way. This is too talented of an offense, and they'll get better and learn from it.
Why do you think it is an extension of the preseason?
Because I think getting practice time is a lot different than getting reps in a game setting, where you have to deal with the communication. You have to deal with getting in and out of the huddle and the operation. And there are certain things that you can't replicate from a coordinator, from a play caller's perspective, crowd noise, the intensity, the environment, and the flow of the game. In practice, you dictate what you're doing.
Sure.
But in the game, you have to be able to counter what defenses are doing. And I think for a first-time coordinator, it's fair to expect some of those early growing pains. And I know that's not what everybody wants to hear, but that's the facts of the matter.
They don't want to hear that.
That's the facts of the matter.
Yeah, exactly. In social media, they want Petulo fired, banned from the building.
Yeah,
turn his car
sent adrift.
Yeah, it's just it's vicious. But Andrew, one of the things you do for us at Inside the Birds is you do a DiCecco Daily.
Yeah.
Where you kind of summarize kind of where your thoughts are in transactions, injuries, lineup changes, opponent, whatever. What do we got coming from you next on this?
Well, I'll be doing one tonight based off of my perspective of the temperature check for the offense.
Okay.
What did I hear from the locker room? And their understanding of what maybe some of the issues are and how they can rectify that and try to add a different perspective to that.
And by the way, Andrew and I have food. I got to give a shout-out to Chickie Pizza's Pizza. They have the most underrated pizza I've ever had.
Easily.
And the crab fries look incredible. Because I see your dip there. I know you're dying to have it.
I've been eyeing it up. I've been eyeing it up. Yeah. But I think that the sauce on the pizza is really
good.
Adds a nice touch to it.
And I don't mind that if it gets cold. I love cold pizza, so there's nothing wrong with it. So let's get to Michael Clay, right? Michael Clay, coming into the season, Andrew, let me ask you this question. If you could, it's only been 5 weeks. What were your thoughts coming into the season, and let's reflect on what it looks like to you now?
Yeah, with Michael Clay, and I've had a chance to talk to him, obviously, over the years and watch him grow and evolve as a coach. I think very highly of him. I think that his leadership ability, his innovation, the way that he approaches that job and tries to find ways to exploit his ability to get starters to buy in to what they're doing and contribute to the third phase. there's always, I mean, I can't say enough good things about what I've seen from him. And this is a coach who just a few years ago, everybody wanted him gone. They didn't, they couldn't fathom him returning for another season.
They were rough on him.
And I was not of that belief. I said,
why?
Because talking to players, talking about how his voice resonates with them.
Okay.
And so I think there's the outside perception. They see what happens for 3 hours, but they don't see what happens the day-to-day, the preparation, the detail that Michael Clay really commands of his unit. You see them, they're very crisp. There's not a lot of penalties, and they play with a lot of energy each and every week.
2 block kicks and a block punt. It's ridiculous. You're looking to get that in 5 years. They got it so far over 4 games.
Yeah, Sidney Brown had a really good line about why it's different here. He said, special teams are different here because everybody that's on special teams has a role. So you're working towards something, and when you see somebody else make a play, you want to go out there and make a play too. And they know how critical the third phase is, and that's not something that in Philadelphia they take for granted.
No, it's not hyperbole, and I give Nick Sirianni credit. He stuck with him because he fired Brian Johnson, okay? And, time will tell if his friend Kevin Patullo works out. But, yeah, it's interesting because this team is 4-0. There are only 2 undefeated teams. And the Eagles play the Bills at Buffalo late in the season in December.
Hey, Philly fans, game day is stressful enough. Parking, traffic, long lines. We've all been there. But when it comes to your cannabis, Camden Apothecary makes it easy. This is the dispensary for sports fans, just minutes outside of Philly. With plenty of free parking, you'll be in and out fast, no hassle, no waiting. And they don't just care about convenience. Camden Apothecary is all about the guest experience. Their staff makes sure you feel taken care of every time you walk in. Plus, they carry only the best quality cannabis at the fairest prices. So whether you're stocking up for the tailgate, the watch party, or celebrating a big win, you're getting the good stuff without overpaying. They even show love to the community with specials for fans, students, service members, and healthcare pros. Camden Apothecary, top quality cannabis, great prices, and an experience made for Philly fans 21 and up.
As we turn our attention to Week 6, now where do they play? They play the Vikings. Is it the Giants or the Vikings next week?
They have Thursday night football with the Giants.
Thursday night football, yeah, wow.
And then the Vikings. Then it should be a home game because it's away, home, Vikings, away, home. Yeah.
They don't play back-to-back home games. Is that the most ridiculous thing you've ever? What is that? It's absurd.
I don't like it. I'm not a fan of it.
Yeah. So next week we'll be at Chickie and Pizza in Marlton, New Jersey. You and Jeff Mosher. You had Trey Thomas on a couple weeks ago with you, right?
Last week he was outstanding.
What did you guys talk about?
We broke down a lot of offensive line play, particularly Fred Johnson. We talked about Tyler Steen, and it really aligned with my what I was able to glean from watching him play and talking to people that he's been fine. He's been fine at right guard. So I think Trey's perspective, and he played the position at a high level, left tackle for the Eagles for many years. It sort of, I guess, reiterated what we're seeing. And he broke down the running play, the 13-yard run that Saquon Barkley had, and how Cam Jurgens was exceptional getting the second level, blocking up Chiefs linebacker Drew Tranquill and Tyler Steen covering up the Chamari, I can't remember. Chamari Connor.
Sure.
So they have it in them. They just need to be more consistent in that area. But he broke down the offensive line like no one else but Trey can.
He is amazing. He taught us the catching technique that Jeff Stoutland has. Trey was an assistant offensive line coach for maybe I forget. He worked
with the Chiefs too.
He did it for a summer. That's right. All right, guys. You listen to the Pro Football Report presented by BCWSA on 107.3 FM as well on 1490 WBCB. It's Adam Caplan and Andrew DiCecco. Next week, Andrew and Jeff Mosher will be at Chickie and Pete's in Marlton, New Jersey. And I'm sure we'll probably get a player because there are a lot that live near Jeff in South Jersey, and that's a little bit of a drive for you, but I know you enjoy it.
Oh yeah, it's a lot of fun. This was a lot of fun.
Yep. Produced by Chris Irmer. We appreciate Chris's work, and it's the great Pro Football Report presented by BCWSA next week at 6 o'clock at Marlton at the Chickie Pizza Marlton. Until then, we'll see you next week.
You're listening to 1490 WBCB and on your FM dial at 107.3 W297CL Levittown.
The Crown